Brandt DXT grain carts have efficient unload speeds, large carrying capacities, unmatched durability, and reliable components that make sure your cart is working when you are. Lead the field with DXT grain carts from Brandt. Visit your local Brandt dealer for more information.
I'm Shaun Haney, and this is RealAg on the Weekend. Let's get real and get connected with the week that was in Canadian agriculture. RealAg on the Weekend starts now. Welcome, everybody, to RealAg on the Weekend. I'm your host, Shaun Haney of RealAgriculture.com. I hope you had yourself a great week. Make sure you check out RealAgriculture.com to keep up to date on all the latest and what's happening in the world of agriculture. You could be a farmer rancher yourself, of course, or maybe you're just trying to, trying to keep updated on the industry. You're living in the city, you're living in Saskatoon or Calgary, and you got some relatives, maybe, a good friend that's in the industry, and you want to appear super smart to them. You're listening to the right show, everybody. Well, like I said, we are RealAg on the Weekend, and this is really a show that provides some perspective on the week that was and the week that is about to be. And we got a lot happening in the world of agriculture. Of course, harvest is well underway in the cattle side of the equation. We're kind of into, we could say we're into the fall run. I think that's for sure. And we got a lot to chat about. We're going to hear today from Saskatchewan Minister of Trade and Export. It is Mr. Warren Kaeding will join us. We're going to talk about what's going on. They're going to be doing some trade missions here in the coming weeks, off to Japan. Of course, Premier Mo is going to China. We'll hear all about that and maybe get a bit of an update on their perspective from Saskatchewan through the Saskatchewan lens on what they see from a Canada-U.S. trade perspective as well. Got a product spotlight with Warren Bills. He's of MNP Ag Intellect. They're just over a year of MNP being into their agronomy services. Looking forward to hearing and getting an update from Warren on that. And then we're going to talk about fertilizer. Yes, we got Josh Linville from StoneX. Yeah, based out of Kansas City. He has got some great insights. He is really the lead fertilizer analyst for many farmers and industry across North America. We'll have Josh on the program here as well. If you have any feedback on today's program, all you got to do is you got to send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or of course you can always call that RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. If you're not getting our emails, highly encourage you to do so. All you got to do is subscribe for free at realagriculture.com/subscribe. And of course, this is a great show we do on the weekends to provide that bit of a summary, but you can always, there's just way too much that happens in a week to fit it all into this show. So check out realagriculture.com and all the different podcasts we produce and put them on our YouTube channel as well as wherever you get your podcasts. So let's start off with Saskatchewan's Trade and Export Minister, Mr. Warren Kaeding. Here's our conversation. There's a lot happening on the trade front. That's probably an understatement for most of us that are listening here in the Real Agriculture audience. We've obviously there's issues between Canada and the U.S., Canada and China, Canada and Europe, Canada trying to diversify its trade portfolio. There's a lot of stuff happening. Here to talk about some of those more Saskatchewan-oriented issues, it is the Minister of Trade and Export Development and the Minister responsible for innovation in the province of Saskatchewan, and also the MLA, I should say, for Melville Saltcoats as well. It is Minister Warren Kaeding. How are we doing today, Minister Kaeding?
Very good, Shaun.
Okay, so hey, listen, like being the Minister of Trade and Export Development, it's like, yeah, that sounds great. Boy, you are a busy boy these days.
Well, I still tell everyone I have an awesome job because I get to talk about the positive things that are going on in the province to people around the world. So I get up every morning still loving my job.
That's good. Well, Saskatchewan, obviously, well, and you know what? To be honest with you, all three prairie provinces. Yeah. If we talk to the ministers of trade of any of the three prairie provinces, they would, trade is very high on the list, and we have challenges. Let's talk about China, and obviously, canola growers very impacted by what is happening with these Chinese tariffs on canola meal, oil, and now seed. What's your government's response to it?
Well, we're definitely very disappointed because we recognize that Canola is the biggest cash paying crop in egg production right now in Saskatchewan and likely across the prairies. And we know the effect that anytime you lose or you're having significant issues with a major trading partner, it's going to affect price. And I don't think our producers are able to absorb any more hits when it comes to return on their investment in agriculture right now.
I guess when you talk to people in the federal government and they say, okay, what needs to happen here from Saskatchewan's perspective, what do you tell them?
Well, especially when it comes to China, we've been told that it has to be a federal government to a national government discussion. We can certainly bring everybody to the table and certainly express our concerns, identify what the risks are and what the issues are to our producers here in the province, but still recognizing that it has to be a federal decision and a federal discussion that has to be made. And I would say the same with the United States as well, is that it is still a federal government to government discussion. We can identify, the costs and the risks to our sectors, but we're unfortunately not able to make a lot of decisions that's going to support our producers when it comes to the trade file.
Well, what Saskatchewan has no, doesn't limit itself in the fact that you do your own trade missions. You do have trade offices in different parts of the world. If these are, national to national or federal government to federal government kind of discussions, what do you've got some countries you're going to be visiting on your agenda. What's the point of those visits then if it's not to do the negotiation itself?
Well, what you're doing is you're identifying the opportunities that you've got in your province. So you're building that relationship, especially with governments that need to have confidence in the government that they're maybe turning their businesses to or encouraging their businesses to engage with. They need to have the comfort and the confidence that they are sending their sectors, their businesses to a friendly country. And that's what we're doing, is we're out there building relationships, building that trust, and building that support so that they in confidence can send folks to start doing those trade deals with us. And we in turn would be the same way.
Now, you've got a trade mission here very shortly. Where are you headed?
So I'm headed to South Korea and then to Japan. And we're meeting with all sectors in both countries, certainly talking about agriculture and agriculture products, but also critical minerals. We're talking about potash. We're talking about investment opportunities back in Saskatchewan for any of their businesses that maybe want to invest in our value chain in Saskatchewan.
We also know that Premier Mo is headed to China next week, I believe.
Correct. He's leaving the same time that I am when I go to South Korea and Japan, and then he'll be joining me at the end of the Japanese segment of my trip.
We are talking today to the Minister of Trade and Export in Saskatchewan, Mr. Warren Kaeding. And what we're hearing here is that Saskatchewan's trying to take some action. They're trying to be on the move and trying to keep up those relationships with some of the countries. And as Canada tries to smooth out relationships and diversify its trade portfolio, they're also trying to mend some fences as it applies to China. And of course, the U.S. is another good example. So we'll continue the conversation with Minister Kaeding when we come back. You're listening to Real Ag on the Weekend.
Great rewards don't wait, so why should you? Through the Invigor Book and Buy Grower program, you could earn a $30 per bag rebate when you book all of your Invigor hybrid canola by November 14th. Talk to your retailer. Terms and conditions apply.
If you're serious about agriculture, RealAg's got you covered.
For over 10 years, we've listened to and shared what producers have to say about everything from policy to agronomy from coast to coast.
Keep up with the latest in Canadian agriculture at RealAgriculture.com through daily newsletters and check out our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us in the Real Ag community as we continue to cover and serve North American agriculture.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Mazik Seeds and Lalamon Plant Care.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
We're talking today to the Minister of Trade and Export for the province of Saskatchewan, Minister Warren Kaeding. And let's hear about what is the plan or the itinerary for Premier Mo, who is off to China here in September. Yeah. As far as you know, Minister Kaeding, what is Premier Mo trying to accomplish in China on his visit? That is, he just announced it. Like, this is coming together very, very quickly. So what is he looking to move the needle on?
Well, he's certainly engaging with the respective ministries in China. So certainly in the agriculture space, in the mineral space, we certainly have trade issues when it comes to canola, peas, pork. We also, they're important customers of ours in the potash industry, the crude oil space. So we just, again, want to make sure that we're in front of the respective ministries that understand what the concerns are, as well to try and understand as well, what their issues are, and then ultimately to be able to facilitate the opportunity for our federal government to meet with their national government to iron out these issues.
Mr. Kaeding, you in your past career were a farmer. That's actually, you and I were both seed growers. We're both recovering seed growers, if we want to put it that way. You know firsthand some of the impacts of some of these trade issues. But what are you hearing from farmers within the province about some of this stuff, like the canola tariffs, for example?
I would say they're extremely frustrated. They've told us in no uncertain terms that they really don't want subsidies or support. They just want to be able to trade in a free and open market. Now, whether we actually have that opportunity anymore, I'm not sure. But I'd say they just want to take the political frustrations out of them being able to market their commodities. I think they're all very good at assessing risk and understanding that. But when you start throwing political issues on top of that, then that ultimately, they're having a difficult time trying to navigate what the risk is associated with that.
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing. I am worried, though, that that's not the environment that's in front of us. That is looking backwards a little, like that's a rear view lens, and we may return to that, but in the short term, it does not feel like that.
I think you had one of the guests on your show, as I'm listening to your podcast, driving to Regina, that talked about we're probably not in a situation where we have trade agreements anymore. We have trade contracts. And I can't disagree with that mindset right now. I'd say a little nervous that if President Trump is successful in what he's trying to accomplish here, that will enable other countries to go down that same path. And then we're going to have a number of one-off bilateral agreements around the world.
Now, on last week of July, you were a part of hosting quite a significant meeting in the province of Saskatchewan that brought Canadian officials and American officials together. What was that meeting?
So that was a Midwest Legislative Conference, and it brought 11 of the U.S. states that are in the American Midwest together with the 4 prairie provinces, and we'll include Ontario, or Western Ontario, as part of that. And ultimately, they get together once a year, and somebody in those 15 jurisdictions is going to host the annual event, and we'll just talk about issues, whether it's to do with certainly with agriculture, energy, education, healthcare. We have a lot of commonality amongst kind of that main trading core. And if you look at where Saskatchewan does the majority of trading with the U.S., it is in that American Midwest. certainly in most of those states that were involved there would be in our top 10 of the states that we do business with as Saskatchewan exporters.
Yeah, and what was the message? In actually, former Prime Minister Stephen Harper spoke at that meeting, and he laid down some pretty significant quotes that were mentioned in the media list after the fact. But obviously, trade deemed to be important, but there are some issues that both countries would like to sort out. And I'm assuming the message kind of was, listen, Canada is not China, and let's focus on where the real problems are. Or am I putting words in people's mouth?
No, I think you've got that encapsulated very well, Shaun, is that ultimately, we're a very integrated marketplace between the U.S. and Canada. I mean, we're both each other's major trading partners. And we have a lot of commonalities. We have a lot of synergies. We have a lot of products that we each would be far better off securing from each other than to go outside of that North American dynamic. And as someone said, this is probably like a family gathering where you can't agree if you're cheering for the Edmonton Oilers or the Calgary Flames. And so you've just, found a common ground that we need to kind of go to. Maybe avoid the conversation for now because there's not much that either one of us are going to be able to control in that. But ultimately, just to find that path forward, recognizing that all terms come to pass, that there will be trade beyond this. We've gone through this before, unfortunately. We've managed to come through on the other side. Yes, there is a bit of hurt that we're going to experience on both sides of the border, but we certainly need to find that path forward that we can build in each other's synergies and ultimately become kind of that North American powerhouse that I think everyone in that room, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, or NDPers or Conservatives, certainly recognize that we have that ability to move forward that way.
We can be polite and say, we can agree to disagree on Flames and Oilers, but we know you should be cheering for the Flames. Let's be honest here.
You and I are in that same wavelength. Absolutely, Shaun. However, that may not be shared by everyone.
Okay, well, we'll give them a pass on their lack of good judgment here. Yeah. Minister Kaeding, thanks so much for joining us here today. Really appreciate it.
Good. No, thanks for your interest, Shaun.
That was my conversation with Warren Kaeding, who is the Minister of Trade and Export for the province of Saskatchewan. India is not on this planned trip, but obviously the province of Saskatchewan has very keen interest in making sure that Canada and India are on the more smoother side of the relationship, which has not been the case as of late. Of course, exports of pulse crops from, quite frankly, Western Canada, very important as we look at the Indian market. That is interesting is the U.S. has really turned up the heat on India. Peter Navarro, who was in the cabinet in the first Trump administration, was on Bloomberg this week saying that the Russia-Ukraine war was Modi's war, alluding to the fact that India has been buying energy out of Russia which is essentially funding their war efforts. At the same time, Canada may be finding a bit of a nicer relationship with India, which is a bit of a change. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand has appointed a new envoy to India more than 10 months after security officials accused Prime Minister Modi's government of espionage, violence, and rupturing diplomatic ties. So this past Thursday, she announced that veteran diplomat Christopher Cooter will become High Commissioner for Canada to India. The senior role is akin to ambassador in Commonwealth countries, according to the Globe and Mail. So while Canada is trying to maybe find some softer relationships with India, maybe the U.S. is going in the opposite direction. I find it a little bit interesting. Maybe India is looking at using Canada counter to what's happening with the U.S. in a different way than China does. China really tends to take out its unhappiness with the U.S. on Canada, where maybe India is going to take a bit of a different tact here and maybe make a little bit more friends with Canada. We'll have to follow that one and see what happens in those relationships. When we come back on Real Ag on the Weekend, we're talking to MNP Ag Intellect right after this.
RiseAbsorb is redefining what growers expect from phosphate fertilizer. Backed by data and built for performance, RiseAbsorb helps reduce phosphorus losses, improve uptake, and boost ROI without increasing input costs. Join the next wave of growers switching to the next generation of phosphorus fertilizers by visiting phospholutions.com.
RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hepner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
With deep roots in agriculture, MNP helps farm businesses make confident financial decisions. From planning to growth, their advisors are here to help support your success. Learn more at mnp.ca.
The following is a paid-for product spotlight by MNP. And we're joined by MNP's National Leader for Agronomy Services. It is Warren Bills. How are we doing today, Warren?
I'm doing great, Shaun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're into the back end of August. Harvest is we're into it. This is the exciting time of year, man.
It is. Yeah, guys are idling in their approaches, kind of waiting for the go ahead. So
yeah, for sure. You know, and we're obviously trying to achieve as much yield as we can. Obviously, given some of the cost structures that are out there for the farmer that they're facing, and we've been talking about some of the considerations around input costs and things like that throughout the growing season. I'm interested to see where what the combine says about some of the yields out there. That the combine, the yield monitor, is that ultimate truth teller when it comes to some of the yields. But let's talk about optimization and what are some of the biggest opportunities you see right now for producers when it comes to having that ultimate field optimization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. The combine, as you mentioned, is somewhat the report card of the year for all the hard work and planning that went in. I think the opportunity that we are seeing really clearly inside MNP and with the team of agronomists and financial experts is, and you're going to laugh, this is coming from an agronomist, it's actually field level gross margin. And thinking about gross margin at a field level. So think about having essentially a set of financial statements at a field level. And why an agronomist is saying that's one of the biggest opportunities is that's agronomy thinks at field level. Accountants often think more at farm and business level. So that blending for us is going to help really uncover where some of the most profitability is coming from on these farms when you look at it at that granular level. And it only can occur kind of through that combination of experts. So that's the biggest in my mind that we're heading into this year. When the report card comes off, we put some numbers against that, and then we can say, okay, here's where we're making money and not. So it's not just about maximum yield that helps, but it is about maximum profit.
Yeah, and we've talked before with people from the accounting side of MNP before about, two farmers sharing a fence row, same soil, same behavior by Mother Nature. Yeah. And the difference on the gross margin per acre is agronomics. We've talked a lot about that before. So often we hear people say, "Hey, success starts in the soil." Okay, share what that means from your standpoint in practical terms for producers today.
Yeah, without getting too techie or geeky on the soil stuff, which we like to do in agronomy, my view is the following. So I believe that 80% of that potential and that success, when we say success starts in the soil, comes from what's happening below ground. But we spend like 20% of our time there. So we might take a soil test. We might check our seeding depth, but then we leave everything else to kind of what's happening above ground. So kind of spending a little bit more time and attention on what's happening below is where we're finding the most success with our farms. As an example, the table stakes would be seeding depth, seeding rate, even seed singulation is showing some great success. A lot of our leading producers have invested in below ground water monitoring. And then, of course, we get into the biology of the soil, which is really the new frontier of what are the bugs doing down there, and how do they interact with nutrition. And so I think it has always been maybe one of the passions of agronomists is to start with a soil test, start understanding what's going on, because that's essentially what you're putting that precious, expensive seed into.
Yeah. Now, for farmers out there that are considering signing on new acres, what can they expect when working with some of MNP's agricultural team?
Yeah, we have we're coming to market with a team, MNP Ag Intellect. We've got experts that in agronomy have been running businesses for 20 years, and now they're running them together inside this really unique, interdependent group of agronomy specialists. So we are very laser focused on the services. There's nothing that we do other than sell services and value to farm customers. We're not into any of the inputs or the equipment or that sort of thing. So the expectations is very comprehensive support, starting with the soil. We offer soil testing, strategic crop plans on top of those soil results, and even taking that information from a farm and building a crop plan that helps them optimize field level gross margin, which is what we talked about at the start. So we've got about 42 field experts now in the prairies, and we're really ready to provide that full support. If you're working with MNP on the financial side, kind of shoulder to shoulder, we get to meet together around the coffee table and then talk yield and money. So.
Yeah, it's really a holistic approach, and trying to increase that. And depending on where you farm, there's a different ideal or optimal gross margin, but it's really about achieving your potential and doing everything you can that is in your control to get across that finish line indeed. So I like the approach very much. So if somebody has more questions, wants more information about MNP Ag Intellect, where do they go, Warren?
Yeah. So we have really a locally driven model. So if you are working with someone with MNP, you can just say, hey, I've heard about the agronomy services. I'd be interested in learning a little bit more. We do have a little bit of information on the website under agriculture, under agronomy. You're also going to be seeing a lot more about, we've continued our business with some really good high definition soil sensor mapping technology and that kind of stuff. We'll have some workshops out there. So just pay attention to some of the marketing and media. But I would say my advice is go local. Go to someone in their local office, and if you can't get a hold of them, find me on the website, and I'd be happy to point you in the right direction.
Great stuff. We've been talking to the National Leader for Agronomy Services at MNP under the MNP Ag Intellect banner, Warren Bills. Warren, thanks a lot for joining us here today.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
When I think back on the beginning of this growing season, 2025, one of the major risks that farmers and ranchers identified, there's regular things like commodity prices and weather, but the other was input prices. And I'm willing to bet here, next week we're going to be into September, and we start to think about 2026 a little bit more as we head into fall. Input prices are going to be even maybe more so of a thought in looking forward. It really does appear that way. Input prices have been very sticky. They've been high. They have not receded. And that's a lot of cause for concern for farmers across the country, not just in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Western Canada, but beyond, across the Midwest and the U.S. as well. So what happens going forward? And that's where we're going to go next. We're going to hear a conversation that I had with Josh Linville with StoneX. He is one of North America's leading fertilizer analysts, really paying attention on a daily basis to the inflows, outflows, production, demand, and really getting our heads wrapped around what's happening with nitrogen, phos, and of course, potash as well. So let's take a break here on RealAg on the Weekend. When we come back, we're going to talk to Josh Linville of StoneX. You're listening to RealAg on the Weekend with Shaun Haney of RealAgriculture.com.
Brant DXT grain carts have efficient unload speeds, large carrying capacities, unmatched durability, and reliable components that make sure your cart is working when you are. Lead the field with DXT grain carts from Brant. Visit your local brand dealer for more information.
I'm Lindsay Smith, host of The Agronomist, and I want to thank you for tuning in for over 200 episodes of our beloved little program. Join me Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for our live and interactive agronomy Q&A. Each week, our guest panel will handle some of your toughest agronomic questions live, streaming on YouTube, Facebook, X, and RealAgriculture.com. Tune in Monday nights or go to RealAgriculture.com/agronomist and sign up for our email notifications and don't miss an episode.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is a video series that showcases the latest in canola research and production agronomy. Learn from some of the best at your own pace through quick and timely producer-focused videos available on our YouTube channel. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is the quickest way to keep up to date on all the latest in canola production. Boost your canola IQ with the Canola School, brought to you by BASF, and visit canolaschool.com.
Let's get to my conversation with Josh Linville of StoneX. He is their fertilizer analyst. If you want to hear the full conversation that I had with Josh Linville, you can just go to RealAgriculture.com or, of course, download Wednesday's episode of the Real Ag Radio podcast. Here's Josh Linville. Give me the lowdown here. We can start with nitrogen. What's at work here? A lot of people thinking about their 26 plans. Some probably have already purchased potentially. Some thinking about it here in the fall. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, unfortunately, there are a few things around the world that are improving slightly. We're seeing a little bit of improvement on Chinese urea exports, which, hey, they're 10% of the global marketplace in terms of exports. So that's a major step forward. We've not seen anything major happen around the world to restrict production, which is kind of what's driven us to where we are today. But unfortunately, man, there's still a lot of problems out there. European producers are still 75% of normal. That's removing millions of tons of nitrogen per year. We still have all the production hiccups we've had in 2025. It's not like we have excess production around the world to make up that difference really, really short time. The thing that scared me the most, though, there is hope and there's fear in the Russia-Ukraine peace talks. Some people may not be aware. Russia remains our biggest single supplier of urea and UAN. We spent a lot of time, talking about, we're not doing business with Russia, the heck with Russia, all these other things. They're our biggest single supplier of a lot of the nitrogen out there. And if we all of a sudden wake up one morning and Trump puts on massive tariffs, we're in trouble and looking for alternatives in a world that doesn't have a lot of alternatives.
There'd be a lot of push for an exemption there.
I think so. Now, whether or not they would get it, that becomes a whole other issue that's probably well outside of most people's pay grades.
Yeah, so I know in the past you've done a lot of the ratios on the price of N and the price of corn. Where do those ratios shake out right now?
Right now, urea is on the higher end. I would say for this time of year, it's probably the third or fourth worst that we've ever seen. When you look at UAN, it is the worst we've ever seen. Anhydrous, surprisingly enough, it's on the high side of what we would consider that normal range, but it's at least still connected. It's still within range of it. And really, when you look at the price of anhydrous versus corn, you look at it versus urea, look at it versus UAN, look at it just on price per pound of actual N, this could be a big fall run. Farmers are going to be looking for whatever route forward that's the cheapest. Anhydrous is one of those routes.
But if you don't have the equipment, you're not set up to do it, then you're looking for a custom applicator to be doing it for you.
Absolutely. And those guys that do have the equipment to do it, they're probably not taking time off. It's going to be one of those situations where as soon as you start, if there's an open window, that tractor doesn't turn off.
Yeah. Phosphorus, ugly.
Ugly. And unfortunately, not a lot of short-term help. A lot of people
What's going on?
It comes back to the world again, right? Everything always comes back to the world view. China's typically your world's largest exporter. They usually export between 8 to 10 million ton per year. Right now, estimates are they'll only export 4 to 4.5 million ton this year. And you got to remember, the phosphate world, 5 countries control 85-90% of global production and global exports. And your leader of that group is less than half of what they would normally do. Again, it's just not the extra production out there to make up the difference. And then we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We've got tariffs and/or duties against every major manufacturer out there as far as countries go. And our own production has been suffering since spring of 21. Q4, Q1, we set the lowest operating rates that we've ever seen at 58%. Q2 was a meager 61%. And so everybody's talking, demand destruction, the price is too high. And usually when we start to threaten these things, we see the price goes down. unfortunately, man, this year, the market is basically saying, I need demand destruction to rebalance the S&D because we're in bad shape.
Well, we could see demand destruction in the U.S. If we see that big flip on the corn and the soybean acre. There's people saying, based on, and we had the Pro Farmer Crop Tour last week that's estimating a lot lower corn crop than what the WASDE told us the week prior. But whether we're at 185 or 188, there's a feeling here that the market signals are going to be to plant more beans. That's less demand for something like nitrogen for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, when we look at it right now, and we had to build our fertilizer demand models based on what our 2026 grain expectations were, back in June, July. Fully transparent. We know the number is going to change, but we had to start somewhere. And when we looked at the bean situation, the corn situation, wheat, and everything else out there, we're still figuring corn acres in 2026 are probably 93 million acres.
Oh, you're that high still. Okay.
We're that high. Now, again, to your point, that is going to continue to change. We had to start somewhere, but let's go back to that yield number. If we're talking 180, 185, 188, whatever the number is, if it's 180 anything, that is a massive crop. And what does a massive crop do? It removes a massive amount of nutrients. We can talk about, reducing a lot of the fields have got, really good supplies left in the soil. They've been applying very, very well, but that's kind of the exception, not the rule out there. If you're pulling a lot, you got to replace some of that, or we're going to have to start talking about what yield potential is for next year.
Okay, potash. But we didn't talk about that yet. Obviously, that's a lot of productions in Canada, a lot of uses in America. So where's potash line up?
It is dead quiet. Nothing going on. That market has been range bound within a $5 to $10 collar. Nothing's going on. Manufacturers act like they're fairly well sold. Buyers here seems like everything's okay. The potash flows back and forth between the Canada-U.S. border. It's always been, from our perspective, outside of the touch of tariffs, so that hasn't really played effect. That discussion point helped prices go up from the start of the year, but it never actually turned into a tariff rate. So, fortunately, potash is just kind of holding steady.
So going forward, if I'm a farmer and in the market to sort out when I'm going to be purchasing, obviously there's considerations here, not just price, but when do I need to take delivery and all those kinds of things. What are the things I need to be watching here right now as I look at these different types of inputs?
I think first thing needs to be having a conversation with your supplier, retailer, co-op, whatever it is, and find out how they're positioned. We always look at it from our own perspective, from the farmer perspective. What we don't look at is from the retailer perspective. They're looking at the exact same high price. They are hearing the stories of, I'm not going to put it on, I'm going to reduce my rates, I'm going to wait till spring, whatever the situation is. Well, they also can't sit there and take all the price risks. So they might be a little more conservative. That you may go have that conversation like, listen, we're not buying what we normally do based on the feedback that we are getting. And if all of a sudden October 15th, we wake up one morning and say, yeah, you know what, we want to go ahead and put it on. We go show up. Hey, I want to put that on. Well, I'll go see what I can find and how quickly I can get it here. But I've been pushing really hard, man, to have these conversations be had, because if we wait till the last minute, we may find out the market just wasn't willing to put those tons in place.
How big of a concern is, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, regarding the barges on the river, in terms of the age of some of those barges and coming, some of them being decommissioned or need to be replaced. How big of a concern is that to, a lot of times we talk about the river levels, but in this case, we're talking about just the supply of the barges. How big of a concern is that for the fertilizer industry?
If we all of a sudden start removing a lot of the barge and that starts to reduce the capacity, the ability to move product up the river, it's massive. I mean, you think about what a big deal it is when the upper Mississippi River shuts down just for the wintertime, right? North of St. Louis, it shuts down every winter for flows and ice and all that kind of stuff. It has a huge impact on basis. If all of a sudden we start reducing the capability of the market to move tons because there's just not enough barges to move it, it's huge. One of the biggest assets that we have here in the U.S. is that river system. If we start to reduce that capacity, man, we're in trouble.
You've been listening to my conversation with Josh Linville. He is the lead fertilizer analyst over at StoneX. Encourage you to go to RealAgriculture.com or download the Real Ag Radio podcast to hear that entire discussion. Josh is awesome when it comes to trying to better understand what is going on in these fert markets. Indeed. If you have any feedback, you can send me an email, shaney@RealAgriculture.com, or call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to Real Ag on the Weekend, and have yourselves a great upcoming week. Cheers, everybody.